EA is back in the news today with some AI talk. GameStop has been having problems with the shiny Pokemon codes because Nintendo isn't giving them enough. And Ken Levine, who is one of the original creators of Bioshock, says their new game Judas is going to be similar, but still pretty different. My name is the Techno Jelly. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate it if you do. If you would like to support the channel directly, please go over to my Patreon at the Techno Jelly, and you can join the credits of all of these videos, and you can join a once a month live stream and vote on what game I will play during that live stream. So please check that out. Starting with the fact that EA, along with the fact that they were acquired by the PIF, Silver Lake, and Affinity Partners for $55 billion, they have been making some headlines with the new owners saying that they are going to try to cut costs with AI. And for a lot of people, including myself, this is a huge red flag of the new owners for EA, because AI generally doesn't mean quality, especially in gaming. Because when they generally say AI, they mean trying to replace people with AI, because it's a cost-cutting measure, not a efficiency improver. Because, like, if you were to use AI to help with management in terms of spreadsheets, analyzing data sets, trying to figure out patterns of players, or trying to figure or cut down on the amount of not coding the programmers have to do, or the developers have to do, or the scheduling of meetings and stuff like that, or the condensing in of information for the AI just to look at, so you don't have to have humans do that. That is what generally AI is better at doing. But what I think EA is, or the owners of EA, or yeah, EA is going to do, is they're going to try to replace developers and artists with AI, not the looking at data sets or figuring out data sets. Because you can have a person look at a data set and try to figure something out, but you can have the person use an AI tool to look at a data set and then look at the results of that tool, and that will be much more efficient usually, and generally with obviously some percentages of failure and huge failure and huge success. Generally they'll come up with the same solution, just faster. But the problem is that it's almost guaranteed that EA is talking about replacing developers and artists, and AI code and AI art are both really still bad, and they're just not good enough to replace humans, because AI does not understand what it's actually creating. It's not creating anything. It's just like spatting out something that you tell it to do, but it doesn't have any idea of what it's actually creating, which is a big problem. And unfortunately, this is probably one of the side effects of the fact that EA needs to pay $18 billion in 2 years to the banks for this buyout. So they need to cut costs really hard. We were worried about that in the first story when we talked about it before, about them cutting studios. Like, I was worried about BioWare being fired or like being shut down, PopCap, the other smaller support studios, because I think DICE is probably safe. Same with the EA Sports section. But one of the ways to not completely destroy BioWare in some sense is fire a bunch of people and have AI replace them. And while I don't necessarily disagree with, like, you don't need 20 managers in a video game company. In fact, I am part of the philosophy of the smaller the studio, the better the gaming product, because there's less hands in the pot. With AAA companies, it's on a bigger scale, of course. I'm not saying BioWare should be 3 people, but like, you know, a 10 to 100 person studio for AAA games should be enough on a reasonable schedule when they're trying to make games every like 3, 4, 5 years, you know? The problem is that AAA gaming is not that. Like, they need to make a game every single year, so you need hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people along with contractors and all that type of stuff. So that's where the bloat of the budget really is, I feel like. And so unfortunately, it looks like EA is probably going to be firing a ton of people at these studios and then trying to use AI to bump up what it can't do now with human power. And the problem with that is that the schedules are going to be the same. So you're going to have, like, for example, instead of 100 people working on a game, 50 people working on a game, and a few AI programs, which is going to be a significantly worse product for us, the gaming people, the players, the the gamers, which is a huge problem, I think, because I'm so done with the AI bubble or the AI buzzword now, because it comes over everything now, and it's just really dumb. And I don't think they're using it properly, because I think AI is an amazing tool and can be used in such good ways. It's not made to replace a human worker, it's made to enhance the human worker's efficiency, like I said, with the data sets. So I really hope they're going to do that, but I highly doubt it. Like I said, it's probably going to be replacing people instead of enhancing their efficiency or workflow or anything like that. And it makes me sad. So here's for Battlefield 6 being the last good EA game for at least a couple years. Moving on to GameStop and their current / previous promotion with shiny Pokemon codes. There were a lot of people upset that GameStop was only giving so many codes per store, and there's a lot of weird stories about how like a group of friends would go and they'd only give a code to one group of people because they thought, or like weirdly they wouldn't allow multiple people to get one code if they're in a group of people, because they were saying like, oh, scalpers. I'm like, they're only getting one code. If it was the same person trying to get multiple codes, I would understand, but if it's like a group of people, a group of friends, and they're like, hey, let's go get this code, and they just individually go get it, that's not scalping. That's just friends getting something at a store, which I understand that GameStop doesn't understand that concept, because no one goes to GameStop stores to buy video games or use gaming. They go there to buy nothing. So I understand why GameStop would be scared about that. But it was also the biggest thing where only 50 per store was a thing, which, to be fair, from what we can tell, was not GameStop's fault. It was Nintendo / the Pokemon Company that was their limit, telling people that that was the limit and you can't do this. And so it feels bad for people who want those codes, especially because at least for a lot of people, GameStop isn't everywhere now. There isn't as many GameStops as there nearly was to be. So 50 per, like, what happens if you only have one GameStop near you? So like the first 50 people get the codes and nothing else. It seems very short-sighted by Pokemon. I don't understand why the Pokemon Company doesn't understand how popular they are. Like, does Pokemon not realize how much people love Pokemon? Like, I feel like there's a weird disconnect where Pokemon and the Pokemon Company constantly have these promotions and they immediately sell out. And like, don't get me wrong, I assume these things are going to be selling out / being given away, or they're going to run out of things at some point. I'm not saying they shouldn't be infinite, but having a Pokemon promotion and say 50 per store is crazy, because on a good day, I assume there's going to be more than 50 people going to GameStop anyway. Like, you want more than 50 customers a day anyway in this game, like to people at least walking in. Like, casual people walking in a GameStop browse should be more than 50 people, and it probably isn't, to be fair, because, you know, GameStop hasn't been doing very well in a very long time, and brick and mortar stores are not doing well. But besides that fact, with a specific promotion, there's going to be way more than 50 people going per store. So it seems weird to me that they limited it like that, and it feels pretty bad. Luckily, they did get Pokemon's permission to get more codes, but it still feels like they still don't really get it. You know, it feels weird. And like, sure, I'm glad GameStop was able to get more codes, but it's weird to see that the Pokemon Company didn't see that 50 wasn't enough, or if like maybe they thought it was going to be like over a period of time. But the thing is, like, this is literally exclusive to GameStop. The only way to get these shinies right now are through this GameStop promotion, which arguably I disagree with in general, but like the only way to get these is GameStop. So what was the thought process here? I wish I was in that board meeting where they decided 50 codes per store, because I wish I could be a fly. Like, I don't understand it at all. And I'm baffled. I've repeated myself multiple times because I'm baffled and I can't understand why they would do this. But luckily they got more codes. So, and there is no, and from what it looks like, there is no hard limit to the new ones on that day. So at least they got it, not unlimited, but like more than just 50 per store. At least they got more codes, which is good. So I hope the people who actually want those things, like, the Pokemon games have been selling the best they've ever sold. So I'm glad that the players are actually going to be able to get these shinies, and I hope that everyone was able to get what they wanted. But every time I talk about Pokemon or the Pokemon Company, I do not understand any decision they've ever made. But, you know, I guess it doesn't matter because they're still dominating. So I guess maybe it's my fault for not understanding, because they obviously understand something that I can't. Lastly, one of the big single player games that are up and coming is a game named Judas, and this game is basically BioShock from a BioShock creator. And the specific person, Ken Levine, he is the writer for BioShock, BioShock Infinite, Freedom Force, which I didn't actually know about, System Shock 2, and Thief. And these games have amazing either gameplay and or story, sometimes both. Like BioShock is a great story, gameplay is pretty good as well. BioShock Infinite, I think the story, while I don't like the story as much, I like the gameplay a lot more, if I remember correctly, and the story is good. I'm not a huge fan of time travel though. System Shock 2 is great, and Thief is a really good game in terms of gameplay. I don't remember the story being pretty crazy in Thief, but I remember people really liking the gameplay. So him saying that Judas is going to, it on a glance looks like BioShock, but it's going to be radically different, as he says, is going to be really interesting to see, because I wonder what they mean by that, because it is true. All the things we know of Judas looks like BioShock, but space, because you've got the guns, you've got the hand with the powers, and you shoot lightning bolts out of your hands. It looks like a interesting game. It looks like a good game, don't get me wrong, but it looks like BioShock. So I wonder what they mean by radically different, because the gameplay looks relatively the same from what we've seen, and they've only seen a few things, to be fair. But to be fair, the gameplay from BioShock games were never that like revolutionary. It was mostly just shooting with magic powers. So it is definitely not revolutionary in terms of game. The reason BioShock was so good was because of the story. So I wonder if they mean by radically different is through the story and not the gameplay. Because right now, all we've seen of the gameplay, very BioShocky. Very BioShocky. Specifically BioShock 1, I would say. Because BioShock Infinite definitely looked a little bit faster paced, and the clippets of gameplay we've seen have definitely been more slower. I'm using slower in a good way, not like a slow bad way. It seems more methodical. Like there is a pace to the combat, you know what I mean? So it feels interesting. And we do know that there are going to be villains, but I think the radically different thing is going to be the, oh god, what's the word for it? It's almost like a choose your own adventure of villains. Because from what we can tell, while the gameplay is normal, how you interact with the main characters are going to be different. For instance, in BioShock, there was always a main villain, you know? There was always a guy you're going after. There was always a bad guy. In Judas, apparently, there is going to be 3 people that are going to be your friends, but if you ignore them, they become villains, which is going to be interesting. And I wonder if you can keep all of them happy, or if no matter what, at least one of them is going to be a villain. It'd be interesting to see if that is going to be a thing where you can, in fact, keep all 3 of them happy. But from what I can probably guess, I highly doubt it. It is going to be a unlikely chance of the fact that they are going to be able to keep them all happy in general. But, you know, I do hope that it will maybe like the most hardcore players can figure out a way to keep all 3 of them happy. Like, I'd like it to be like, it's very difficult, but it's possible. You know what I mean? And I'm wondering if only one of them become a villain. Like, what happens if you only do one person and only focus hard on one, and then you have 2 villains? I wonder how they're going to do that. Because it feels like narratively, it's going to be a mess or very difficult to write for it because there's going to be so many options. So it does feel like it's going to be very difficult, but they've been working on this game for at least publicly, it's been 3 years in development. Privately, who knows how long they've been working on this? We do know the game was announced 3 years ago, so it's been a while since they announced it, and it does seem like they're more in the marketing stance of the game now, with official blog posts and all that type of stuff too, along with them doing interviews. So I'm going to be very interested to see how much more they talk about it, or if this is the beginning of the marketing push and then a release date, because I'm almost positive there is no release date. I haven't been able to find one with my Googling of it. So it'll be interesting to see how close we are, but I still feel like it's going to be a couple years now. And I think some very good thing that they did say, and they've been very blatant about it, is that there's no online and there's no live service. This is going to be a game you buy and you play, and there's no online multiplayer, there's no battle pass. You buy the game and you play the game, which is great for a single player game that they're trying to make. Like, you know, I understand people's upsetness that there's no online multiplayer, because I remember people enjoying the BioShock multiplayer when there was a thing. I remember people really liking BioShock 2's multiplayer. Like, so there was a small but decent player base base and a bunch of players that really enjoyed the Bioshock 2 multiplayer, if I remember correctly. But I am glad that they are just focusing on the single player so it's the best it can be, because if they're planning to price this game at a full price game with single player only, that single player's got to be really good. It's got to be good and a decent amount of length. You know, I'm talking like 10 to, I would argue, like 10 to 40 hours is probably what most people would be okay with in a single player game at full price. That isn't advertising itself as an open world checklist box game, because I do think those games take the bloat to too far extreme. But I do think a 10 to 40 hour campaign, depending on how well, how much they want to pace it, I think it's a really good idea. And I hope that that's what they're aiming for, because from everything I've seen, this game looks really good. And it looks like the Bioshock / System Shock game I've wanted since those two games, While I haven't played System Shock in a very long time, I do miss these styles of games in the huge budget range. There are a lot of games that are a lot like System Shock or Bioshock. There's tons of games that have that DNA in them, but they're smaller teams. And no offense to those teams, but they can only do so much with the time they have and the budget they have. I would love to see a big budget version of these games again, because honestly, after Bioshock, when it comes to single player games like that style of game, I don't know. I don't really remember anything after Bioshock Infinite, and Bioshock 4 is taking 20 billion years to make, and it's not the same team. So it's going to be a very different game, I feel like. So we'll have to see how they size up to each other if they come out anytime close to each other. Thank you everyone for watching today's video. I really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button, like the video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it. I completely understand. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers, so if you would please help me reach that goal, hit that sub button. If you would like to join all of these nice people going along in the credits, please go over to my Patreon account at the Techno Jelly. You get access to a poll to vote on a once a month stream. That stream is happening on the 18th of October this month. So please join the Patreon if you would like to vote and catch that stream over on Patreon. If you'd like to follow me on other platforms, I have a Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Threads. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.